Are you holding on to more than just memories? My guest, Michelle Passoff, is on a mission to help you clear the clutter, not just in your closets, but in your life. She's an author, podcaster, speaker, and consultant who believes decluttering isn't about getting rid of things, it's about making space for what truly matters. Her first book, Lighten Up, Free Yourself from Clutter, redefined what it means to let go. And now, with her latest book, Decluttering 55 Plus, Create a Legacy, Not a Mess, she's tackling the next level clutter that comes with aging. Whether you're downsizing or simply reimagining your space, decluttering is key to gracefully letting go of the life you built over the decades so you can step into a life of so much more. Get ready for some serious inspiration on how to free yourself from the weight of stuff and step into a more intentional, joyful future. Welcome, Michelle Passoff, to the Don't Be Caged by Your Age podcast. I'm so happy you're here to chat with me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you.
And folks tuning in, I met Michelle at my favorite annual event, Pod Fest, and I saw her and I heard what she was up to, and I said, "Oh my gosh, please, please, please come on the podcast and share," because so often we hold on to things, and I think what you're doing is helping so many folks. But before we begin and dive into all the good things you're doing, please share with folks, how long has the world been enjoying the gift of your presence? Because we love to age out loud and proud here on the
Aging
podcast.
out loud. I am 71 years old. I'm living in St. Petersburg, Florida, but I am hard and fast New Yorker at heart.
Yay! I absolutely love what you're doing and how you're bringing such an incredible service and perspective to the world. Your career has taken you from publicity in New York City to estate sales and now to helping people free themselves from clutter. Talk about what led you to this work and how has your earlier career shaped your approach to decluttering?
Yes, I went from sitting on Madison Avenue, working with international companies on their media, and it really wasn't the genesis of decluttering. I was probably the first generation of women coming out of school who had a choice. You didn't just become a mom and get taken care of by your husband, and you weren't yet breaking any glass ceilings. So you had choice, but there were no mentors really to look toward to tell you how to do it. So I did every class and retreat and workshop that you could find to find out who I was and how I do business as a woman in a workplace that really wasn't welcoming us yet at the time. And after 15 years of doing that, I said, well, you can go on and do these workshops forever. What's my conclusion? And my conclusion was you get rid of what you don't want and need and use and love, and you make space for what it is you really want. Know what you want and have no obstructions to getting it. So that was the genesis of my career. Instead of being on Madison Avenue, being in garages and basements and attics.
I love
And
that.
I used all of my marketing skills to go up and down Broadway in New York City, hanging signs that said, "Lighten up, free yourself from clutter, create the space for miracles while
Oh
you
my.
free yourself from too much stuff." And
Oh,
that was the title of my first book.
I love that, something fierce.
Oh, yeah.
You are absolutely right. You came of age in a time where women had a choice and the ability,
No way to do it.
right? But nobody had shown you the road yet. So you were the pioneers
Yeah.
breaking ground, so to speak, on what choice looked like. But I love that you also were into personal development and
Yes.
professional development, that you had enough direction inside of you, Michelle, to say, I want to do better and I want to be better. I want to have a more fulfilling life. What does that look like? I'm going to go on a retreat. I'm going to do this. There must have been something about your problem solving skills that you would look at a room and go, okay, I need to help people in the decluttering, because you would, through your retreats, I'm sure you'd learned how to declutter the mind a little, right? But now you know, and especially in the small spaces of New York City, people
Mhm.
needed to declutter their lives. What do you think was the thread inside of you? What did you learn about yourself? I guess is what I'm trying to say. that said, yes, this is what I love doing, is helping people make these decisions?
Well, what happened was, first of all, I wanted to say a lot of people ask me, "Oh, are you a recovered clutterer?" And the answer to that is no. In fact, I grew up in New Jersey and I lived about an hour and 15 minutes from New York City. That was enough to be the country at the time. And we lived with 5 kids in a 2-bedroom house. And so my father had prospered in his business and decided it was time to move to a bigger place. And he took a picture out of a magazine that he found at the local coffee shop, and he built the house on the cover, which was a glass house.
Oh, you're
And
kidding.
people in glass houses cannot have clutter. One of my best teachers for being free from physical clutter was my mom. I don't know, maybe as 5 kids growing up in the 50s and 60s, we just didn't have a lot of toys. I'm not sure, but there wasn't a mess. My mother would always make sure everything was tucked in, including us at night. So it didn't come from that perspective. Out of the 5 children, 3 had mental illness. And it was difficult sorting out the sane from the insane. And that was my personal decluttering process. Like,
There you go.
I didn't have whatever gene that was or biology that was. Luckily, I didn't.
Right.
And that whole process of being sane in an insane world was my own personal decluttering process.
Absolutely. As a witness too, right?
Yes, but what happened was that I had a friend who was so cluttered in her apartment, she called out her best friends to come with the promise of pizza to come and help her clean her apartment. Otherwise, she's going to be evicted. And in the process of that, I had an epiphany based on my own training growing up in a physically clutter-free
Mhm.
household, and the skills that I had learned in transformational technologies. I kind of, like, in the process of helping her, knew exactly what to do and how to do it. And the very next day, I just hung a sign in a local coffee shop and said, "Lighten up, free yourself from clutter, create the space for miracles while you free yourself from too much stuff."
Hold
And
that up there again. And for those listeners, the viewers are catching it on YouTube right here. Here's the cover
yeah,
of her book.
it's been out a while, but it was the first book in the organizing genre to talk about physical clutter in a conventional clutter in a non-conventional way. I don't talk about it to be neat and tidy. You will get neat and tidy, but that's not really my interest. My interest is being free to know who you are, what you want, and have no obstructions to get it. So that's
And
how I started.
I love this. So many of us have seen, of course, there's the joy person. What's her name? Marie.
Maria Kondo.
Yeah, Maria Kondo. I think she gets a little too, almost like Martha Stewart and her perfectionism about decluttering. What I'm hearing from you is that you're helping relieve the stress of too much in people's lives. And so, how do you go to work with someone? Because you're working not just on what am I going to keep, what am I going to donate, what am I going to throw away, those 3 piles. You're doing much greater work.
The very
Okay.
first question I ask them is, "What are you making room for?" And
Ah,
I don't mean having your desk clean or having your clothes hang on the closet instead of on the back of a chair. I'm talking about your life. What do you want in your life? And then when we go to work, it may seem as if we're clean. I like to draw the attention of the person I'm working with to the miracles that I'm talking about. My assertion that if you clean the physical clutter, there'll be more serendipity in your life. Things will fall into that empty space that are exactly what you want when you want it and when you need it. And I invite people to experiment with that so that instead of refusing clutter, they actually welcome it as an opportunity to have greater ease and less stress in their lives, because watch and see what happens. I mean, it's just
right.
amazing.
Y-
I don't have a lot of clutter, yet I went into a cab the other day. My husband and I do art together. He's a sculptor, but we do some things together. And I do photography on my own. And we wanted to declutter. They were having a community yard sale. So I said, let's go through our closets and, shoe drawers and the shed in the back and see if we can find some clutter. And we had artwork that really needed not to be in our shed. It needed to be hung in a gallery or something like that. And we only have one car, but on that particular day, we had to put it in for maintenance. So we took an Uber. And the Uber driver said, "Oh, guess what? My friend, he's opened a gallery around the corner, art gallery." And we go, "Wow." And then we noticed he has a French accent, this driver. And my husband is Belgian and his mother language is French. And we said we'd like to meet that owner, who also turned out to be French. So there was a camaraderie just based on fellow countrymen, or Europeans at least. And it turns out now we have 12 pieces of art in his gallery for the opening. And I say we were cleaning clutter and we had the intention to do something constructive with that artwork other than have it be in a shed. And then look what came into that empty space.
Right.
Now, I've had clients that said, "Oh, one of my clients in New York was always in the kitchen cabinet of politicians, and she would raise money for them, but she was never a politician herself." And she said, "What am I making room for? I'm making room to run for office." So I said, "Okay, where are we going to start?" And you go, "Okay, what does cleaning your files have to do with running for political office?" So I invite people to suspend their disbelief and clean the conventional clutter, but have a thought in mind of what you're creating space for. And long story short, she did run for office. She didn't win, but she ran for office. And she was at a different political persuasion than I was, but I donated to her campaign just because, it was a fulfillment of something that she desired. And that it doesn't look like, well, if I clean my closet, I'm going to get the man of my dreams. But that happened to another client of mine. She wanted to get married. She cleaned her closet. She got in that time period, got an invitation to go to Australia to do a sabbatical. And she met her husband there. Now, somebody might say, "Oh, that has nothing to do with what she was doing with cleaning her closet." But I think when you have fewer physical obstructions, it operates at all levels. Watch and see the connection, and then you'll look for clutter rather than avoid it.
It's energy, folks.
Yeah.
We're chatting
Yeah.
with Michelle Passoff, author, podcast host, speaker, and founder of Decluttering 55 Plus. Please visit her website, decluttering55plus.com, and follow her on Instagram, decluttering the number 55 plus, to learn more about her extraordinary work. You are singing my song, Michelle. I am all about decluttering for the energy reasons,
Yes.
stirring up the energy, removing things, and absolutely creating space for more. Now, I've had to move a lot. In fact, in 1 year, I think it was in a 5-year period, we moved 9 times
Oh,
with children. And I'm
oh.
talking East Coast, a few places, and over to LA, and then back again. Okay. So we had to keep things lean and mean to afford all those moves, but it kept us in the decluttering mode. But I also saw what you're talking about. What are you making room for? And listeners, I want you to really think about that when you go to clean out a closet. It's not about so much, I'm hearing from you, Michelle, it's not so much about what's in the closet. It's what are you making room for? That activity, that action is what's going to open up opportunities for you that might have been stuck somewhere, not able to come to you. So, Michelle, take us through the journey of working with a client. So you get hired and you say, okay, you ask them this important question, whether they journal on it, meditate on it, or they just have it in their subconscious. What are you making room for? Then how do you help them?
Well, you go one item at a time, but I want to make note that, well, that's conventional clutter, your papers, your clothes, and your other stuff. And I recommend they go 100% item by item, one item at a time through their entire home. And then, they'll be free from physical clutter and get the unconventional results. But when you're 55, it's a different story. Now I'm working, I went on after I did a lot of consulting all around the world and speaking and consulting with people all around the world on conventional clutter in an unconventional way. What I'm doing now is 55 plus, which is what I call next level clutter. And as a precursor to the self-help book that I'm writing, I came out with a colorful illustrated book of wisdoms that point to areas of life that are next level clutter, areas of life you want to sweep under the carpet, put off another day or forever. But my assertion is that if you address these, learn what is not confounding and confronting you, get answers to your questions, get in action, and get things done, that you leave a legacy, not a mess, that you're not handing it off irresponsibly to the next generation so they can take care of your stuff. It's not so that you do this stuff to roll over and die. It's so that it invigorates the life you have as you age. And I might add, before we go on to the next question, is what is next level clutter? Next level clutter are areas of life like your health, your fitness, your exercise, technology, social relationships, your memoir, where are you going to live next? What are you going to do next? Your financial and legal matters, and even your final arrangements. Not everybody has difficulty in every one of those areas, but if there's an area that you are having difficulty with, don't sweep it under the carpet. Bring it onto the light of day, address it, get your questions answered, and get into action and get it done. And then you're going to expect the unexpected. Maybe there's possibilities in your life you never even imagined before.
Absolutely. And of course, that's what we hear a lot about on Don't Be Caged by Your Age from our guests. Vocations and joyful experiences and rewiring for a whole new purpose and enjoyment of life instead of this, I'm going to downsize and I'm just going to become this lonely, isolated person in a corner, because sometimes that's what society tells us. And we've got Michelle here enjoying how many years on the planet, Michelle?
71 and
See,
proud of it.
71. Look at her.
And
She's
getting
soaring
younger.
and helping
We're
everybody.
living longer, we're living healthier, and we're setting an example for generations to come. So why not dream the impossible dream, what you didn't even think of? It used to be that 6 months after you retired that you were 6 feet under. Well, that's not happening anymore. So you have to put your creative cap on, and the more room, you think an artist has to have, a mess to create. Well, I think it's just the opposite. You have to have the open space mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically to
Absolutely.
really create your life.
You know what
Rather,
I love, Michelle, about you is that in the early 1970s, right, you
yeah,
were breaking ground, pioneering. Women had choice, but you were in the forefront of showing what choice looked like. And here you are in your early 70s, again, just, instead of early 1970s, you're in your early 70s doing the same thing. You are showing folks what it can be like in your 70s and feeling fulfilled, and you're breaking ground, Michelle.
I think I might be, and I thank you for recognizing that. But I'm just being me, and that's who I am. Is really being creative.
That's right.
Being creative with life. That's what I would say. So
Thinking outside the box. And what I love about decluttering 55 plus, and folks, remember, visit decluttering55plus.com to learn more, and especially to check out Michelle's flip book that she has, which is
yeah,
so helpful.
you can go to Amazon.com to find it. You
Mm-hmm.
can also go to a company called layitflat.com. And that's a company that sells spiral books. So they took a liking to the subject and they sell spiral books. And that's at
Excellent.
layitflat.com.
I'll
So
have the link in the show notes, everyone. We
and
love to
each
support.
page will be a prompt to find out something you didn't know, get your questions answered, get in action, and get it done. Because action is the only thing that makes a difference. So
It absolutely, and we need all the help sometimes to take that action. And what I love about the 55 plus that you're working on now, Michelle, is that we have built up decades of our life. What do we hold on to? What do we keep? What do we take a photo of and put into a memory book? And what can we let go of? How do you help people through that process? Because I'm sure there are parents whose kids don't ever care, whose children don't ever care if they ever see their baby teeth, their baby hair, all of those things.
I want to argue with that because I think they don't care about your china and they don't care about that, big, heavy wood break front that you have, but they do care about the family legacy. So I think
Okay,
one of
good
the
to know.
overlooked areas that people think that they are not talented for or not famous enough for is writing and doing in some form or another their life story. I was talking to somebody yesterday and she said, "Oh, we have a very oral heritage. I talk a lot about my stories." I said, "You talk a lot to your kids and it'll fade a little bit when your kids tell that story, or they won't even tell that story at all. So in some form or another, whether you write a book, you do a videotape, you take all those photos of the furniture you're letting go of and you put it into a memory book that tells the importance of those to family and why they collected them. In some way or another, you pass down your stories and your family's stories through some media or another for other generations. It's one of the overlooked areas of 55 plus clutter that is really important. I mean, how many times have you, I don't know, I have woken up in the morning and say, my father's father died when he was 18 months old. I don't know what it was like for him to be raised by a stepfather.
Right.
He never talked about that. My mother never talked about that her parents were divorced. She never talked about that.
Well, they shouldn't. And you're asking the important question. So my parents who have passed, they filled out some form and it was chronological. We did this from this date to this date and this date there was no, but how did you feel about that? What was it like to be uprooted? What was it like to watch your father lose his business and you had to move into your grandfather's home? Nobody talked about the emotional impact because that ends up living in your body as well. So I love that you're asking those questions. How did you navigate life given these circumstances? Because
And
you
it's
had to have.
your side of that story, because my sister might tell a different story than I tell about me and about our upbringing. Even though you have 5 kids being raised in the same family, you each have your own perspective. So it's telling your side of your life story. And I really think that is, so important. There's so much help out there with companies that like Story, Storii, that you for $199 you can get them to call you 3 times a week for a 10-minute conversation with a question that you're going to answer, and eventually that's all put into a memory book. Or get help from a photo manager. There's it's a blossoming profession.
Yes.
They'll come in, you can pay a few dollars to get your memory book done digitally, by the way, and multiplied 100 times to however many family members you want it. There's many ways to do that. Audio,
Oh
video.
my gosh. You
You
said
know,
you had me at higher.
yeah,
Because
I don't have to do it. That's good. Yeah, that's one of the areas of next level clutter, was get help when you need it. We want to be like independent Americans, but if you need help and you're not going to get it done unless you get it, then you can leave your money. You could go ahead and do that, but use some of that money toward making sure that who you were and what
well,
you did and what you thought and what you experienced, because the things your kids and grandkids will inherit won't only be your money. They're going to inherit things that you go, oh no, my father was a journalist, so of course that's where it comes from. Or my grandfather did that, and of course that's where it comes from. Or not just physical ailment type of things, but personality inclinations that you might have come from somewhere.
absolutely. Anybody who watches Finding Your Roots, that's what Louis Gates does all the time with his guests, is they can see, wow, no wonder I became this actor, this author, this scientist, whatever. You go back generations, you can see where you picked up either those traits in your DNA
Yeah,
package or, the groundwork that was laid there. And I love that you're talking, it's more than the financial legacy. Yes, of course, it'd be great to leave your family members financial boost in their lives, but boy, the boost that you can leave them by telling your true story and not the chronological one, right, Michelle, but the one that what really happened.
yeah.
And
What were
how
your
did you get through
challenges? How did you face them? What did you do? So yes, it's very
and
important.
even if you
Another
have to
area.
say even if you have to say that was too painful, I can't really talk about it. At least you're sharing with folks that was too much for you to put into words. And I hear that a lot from folks who had survived from the Holocaust, et cetera. It's hard to talk about it, but they can share some nuggets. And then subsequently, anybody who's had any kind of abuse or any trauma in their lives,
Yeah.
it may be hard to stir it up, but you can frame it in a way.
You can also divert it for future generations. So
Oh,
another area that people don't necessarily like to talk about is, their final arrangements. I spoke to a woman yesterday and she says, "Oh, my final arrangements, I'm all set. I'm going to have people do this and do that. And at the end of the day, they're not going to be at a funeral home. They're going to be at my house and they can't leave until they drink all the liquor." So she had a joie de vivre about her life and about her death. So be creative. How do you want to go out? Go out with some kind of style, or
Exactly.
if you're going to delegate that, let the person you're delegating it to know so they can be prepared and not in grief at the moment they have to make major decisions about whether you get cremated or buried or what box and what cemetery.
And there's no fight among the children about how
Yeah.
she told me cremated. No, she told me box. No, it's here in
Yeah,
writing. Oh, I love
exactly.
that. And listeners, are you enjoying this conversation as much as I am? If so, please take a moment to support Don't Be Caged by Your Age. You can be a sponsor. You can show your support by buying me, quote, a coffee. For just
Mhm.
$5 a cup, you can sponsor the podcast and help amplify inspiring voices like Michelle's, break age related stereotypes, and reach more listeners worldwide. Visit buymeacoffee.com/Ande Lyons. Every cup makes a difference. And let's make aging a journey of joy and possibility together. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Let's talk about, first of all, was it hard for you to do the book? Because I think a lot of people feel they might have a book in them, but they don't take that action. And you are so about action, Michelle.
Yeah.
How was that to create your book? And then I'm also going to ask you how it was to launch a podcast. So, first, talk about your books.
Well, my first book, I had it in mind that I couldn't get to everybody's storefront with my personal clutter cleaning services. So I'd write a book. Oh, that's a good idea. Now, I did go to journalism school. I went to Syracuse University's Newhouse. So I was headed in the direction of, I wanted to write something that would impart my experience of living to others in a way that it made a difference for them. But when I was 22 years old, I had no experience. So I had nothing much to say. But by the time I had reached 40, I thought what I had to say about cleaning clutter was worth listening to. So it was
Yay.
worth writing a book. And I started doing that at the same time that I was leading classes down in Soho in Manhattan. And after one of my classes, I got a call from a student the next morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, "Why are you calling me at 8? Can't you call me at 9:01?" And then she said, "Oh, I'm a reporter for the New York Times." So I said, "Well, that's different. You can call me anytime." And she had been in the class and she heard that I was talking about clutter a little differently than just being neat and tidy. And asked me if I would come and do a private consultation with her because she was writing an article. And the day that article came out at 9:01, which is more the proper time, I got a call from an agent and a publisher to publish my book. Now, that was in a day and age 6 months prior to Google.
Right.
So we weren't self-publishing very much in those days. You had to actually almost publish a book before you could get a book published. So it was a vicious cycle of despair to get a book published. I just got lucky, but I don't think that it just comes out of luck. It was a very high intention.
Oh yeah,
And
no, you did all the right things as a founder in branding and getting the word out. And this is what luck means, everybody, when opportunity meets preparedness. You were
yes,
prepared on your subject. You had plenty of opportunity to help people. So when this journalist, this writer for the New York Times, was in your class, she put together the dots, she connected them. And so people are like, "Oh, isn't that lucky that happened to you?" Well, that's because you were prepared for the opportunity when it came along.
yeah,
And they looked at you and said, "This is going to be a no brainer." Pulling this, she's already done the book. We can see the book. And we just need to get her published and edited and out into the world. I love that.
but
And then the
fast scroll all these years later, and publishing a book is very different. And I'm in the throes of navigating the new era of publishing a book. So
oh, it's so much work.
I have a podcast called Decluttering 55 Plus, and it's on YouTube and podcast.
Yeah, Apple and
Yeah,
Spotify and everywhere
all
you
that.
go.
And I
And
interview authors and experts and geeks of all kinds and the next level clutter topics to provide resources and information and insights that will help people do what they have to do to loosen up wherever they're stuck.
well,
So
I'm definitely
yeah,
tuning in.
do the flip book, do the podcast, and then while I'm writing the book. And by the time that I finish the book, hopefully I'll have some people who've already heard about me and will buy it.
Absolutely. And it's a whole different journey, listeners, nowadays for an author. Even if you get an agent and a publisher who gets your book out there, you still have to do the work and the legwork and build awareness and do all of this as well. But it's still so important because it's for your legacy. It's for getting something that's really valuable out into the world so people can have a healthier, happier, joyful, and intentional older adult life. And that's the beauty of what you're doing. When did you launch the podcast?
I launched it November of last year.
Oh,
So
congratulations.
it's not an easy road. I oftentimes wake up in the morning and go, wouldn't I rather go cruising? You know, wouldn't it be better? And I'm not convinced it wouldn't be, but be prepared for some bumps along the road. It's difficult in a different way than it was before.
Absolutely.
Difficult before, it's difficult now. So don't think it's all lined with roses, but I don't stop in the face of adversity.
And I think too that after 6 months of a cruise, you'd be, your head would be pounding against the wall. It would never be enough for you, Michelle. You are a seeker, and you would, with your discerning eye on the world, I know you would be looking to solve another problem to make it a better place. So we love that.
Yeah, thank you for thinking that.
And because I look at those beach photos, someone sitting on the shore of a gorgeous Caribbean beach with the palm trees and beautiful weather, and they're like, this is me every day. And I'm like, okay, I could make it a certain period of time in that climate for sure, but I would be so done after a certain period because of my nature of wanting to. And for a lot of people, and this is what I've learned through Don't Be Caged by Your Age, is that we do need purpose to get out of bed. And, 70% of us want to keep working in a way that is fulfilling while we're managing our energy portfolio, meaning what do we want to put our time and energy into? And you have shared some wonderful, rewarding stories. Is there one that specifically stands out for you where you really helped someone where they were 55 plus, where you could see, wow, here they glow now?
Well, I started giving classes. I started my journey on decluttering 55 plus by doing roundtables, which more or less was a way for me to market test that people wanted to hear about the different topics that I was addressing in Next Level Clutter, which is not your conventional physical clutter, but areas of life that we like to avoid.
Right.
And then I morphed into doing classes, and I asked people to pick a next level clutter area that they want to focus on, and what are their obstacles and what are the steps that they have to do to get there. And I take them through mentally or on paper, like what would it take for them to move in those areas. And so it's an experiment for me. I never led that class before. And at the end of the class, it shocked me that a woman who she had to be in her 70s was saying, I never liked to cook before. I'm going to start to cook. Or a guy who was a lawyer who was rereading every law case that he ever did over the course of a 50-year career. And then when he gets done with it, he'll be free from clutter. Now, he'll be dead by then, and he won't be having done whatever's next. So I think I released him of the need to, be busyness rather than constructively living a life that he loves. And other people were like, oh, wow, I'm going to get rid of those 400 pairs of shoes that I have. Who needs them? So everybody got their thing out of the class. So that was very satisfying.
And Michelle, was that in person or online?
That was in person. I do classes and speaking engagements in person all around the country. In fact, the day after I decided I was going to start writing Decluttering 55 plus, I got a call out of the blue from nowhere from Senior Center in California asking me to lead a class for seniors. So I knew that it must be right if out of nowhere comes this invitation for 55 plus seminars. So I do it all over. I'm here located in Florida, so I have a tendency to start out doing things nearby. But I always said, if they call, I come.
I love that. And you are such a great facilitator. And that's another one of your core skills. You're able to teach, but you're able to facilitate. So you're able to help people take the action, have the aha moments that they need in
That's
order.
exactly what was happening in that class. And I myself was like taken aback that they were getting what they got. And I'm really excited to get out there more and speak and lead
Michelle,
classes.
this is what I love about in-person events. Yeah, this is why I launched it almost a year ago, the New England Podcasters Group, because I wanted the intergenerational experience. And of course, podcasters are so fascinating, right? But I wanted the in-person experience. I wanted to see people and talk and have the growth moments and the aha moments together. And that's what you're bringing to folks. And I sure hope you come up to Boston sometime. That would be so wonderful
I would love
to
that.
meet you and hug you again in real life. What I love
That's a good plan.
too that is that I'd love to know, how do you personally, how are you embracing positive aging? When you see that you're speaking around the country and doing all these wonderful things, and with your book, Decluttering 55 Plus, but I'm sure you're looking down the road with some more ideas, perhaps, of how you're aging. Are you confronted with any ageism? Are people saying, when are you going to slow down, Michelle? What are you seeing, and how are you managing this chapter of your life?
Well, right now I stay healthy as best I can. I've always been on a diet, but now I'm planning my meals and I exercise with a trainer. I figure it's a good way to spend my money
Yeah.
is to make sure that I'm doing the right kind of exercises for building strength and flexibility and balance and movement that I need. And I see doctors regularly.
There
I,
you go.
best thing that ever happened to me so far, we don't know what's going to happen to it, is Medicare. So I
Right.
do that. I also do what I've always done. I said I would retire if I only had something to retire from. I've most of my life, I did work for 15 years at a PR agency, but most of the time I was otherwise self-employed. So I've
Or
always been able to take the time to go a week here or 5 weeks there, or go away when I wanted. So
Mhm.
I do still do that. I went away for a month 2 years ago to study French in the south of France. It was delightful.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
we took a 5 week trip to India. So I don't go, okay, draw a line like I'm working, then I stop working, and then I'm going to travel. I kind of intersperse it. I do
I
that.
think I think that's a beautiful balance. And I
Yeah.
think it's a great way to use our energy portfolio, is to carve out the time. We want to work 20, 30 hours a week, or we want to work and then, for 5 months and then take so many weeks off to explore a passion. And folks, really, you can rethink about not being an employee. Michelle and I have this in common. I've been unemployable since 1992. I've founded 4 businesses and raised capital and done all the things. So and you're already used to managing our own and being self-directed. But when you have the employee mindset, when you do retire from that, you can rebuild your own mindset to where you are an owner of your time and your
It
work.
doesn't come without discipline. I come, I say I'm the only 9 to 5er who doesn't have a 9 to 5 job. I work. I get up at 8. Get to my desk by 9. I work until sometimes 4, because by 4 o'clock I go. That's when I schedule my training, personal training,
Excellent.
and then that's my evening. So I'm still disciplined, and
Yeah.
I think whether or not you're got to get up in the morning to plan your vacation, or you got to get up in the morning to write a book. You discipline, not staying in bed all day and lounging and sitting in the chair, getting
Well,
out there and getting connected and staying engaged in one way or the other. I figure, that's one of the areas I explore in the work that I do, is what's next after retirement. And as
right.
I figure it, there's earners, learners, rest and relaxers, and explorers and volunteers.
Oh, you've got to say that all over again. Earners,
Earners,
yearners,
learners, rest and relaxers. What else do I have in there?
explorers.
Explorers. So yeah,
Love that line up there. Listeners, let
yeah.
us know what you identify with. I know Nancy J, you're out there going, I'm the rest and relaxer right here. Thank you. I'll watch all of you be adventurous and explore and earn. This has been such a wonderful conversation. Michelle, how can folks work with you, learn from you, follow you, stay in touch with you?
I'm at www.decluttering55, the numbers, then plus.com. That's decluttering55plus.com. And if people go to the Let's Connect button, sign up, I will send you news you can use from my ends of the world. And I can promise you, I don't clutter your inbox. When I have something to say worth listening to, I'll let you know. And
Excellent.
tune into the subscribe, if they will, to at Decluttering 55plus on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, and tell me your challenges and successes, and we'll share with one another. The whole idea is to, whether you're online or in person, to generate a conversation and not be alone, which is another area of 55 plus clutter, is your connectedness to others. So connect with us.
Oh my gosh, I love it. You are definitely the gift that keeps on giving, Michelle. I'm so grateful you joined me. And listeners, yeah, this whole pro-aging movement is a journey. We're shifting our perceptions of what this time period is like. And I know from the feedback I get from the 40 and 50-year-olds out there who are going, oh my gosh, I have a whole new view of what aging looks like. I can't wait to be an even older adult. So it's really wonderful that we're having these great conversations. Hop onto the website, Don't Be Caged by Your Age, and subscribe to the newsletter. It's once a month. I give you a recap of all the great folks we've chatted with and what we've learned from and from them. And finally, I just want to encourage you, please remember, you have so much more to give. Don't let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you from pursuing new dreams or opportunities, no matter where you are in your aging journey. Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your view of the world and how you're helping the world become not just decluttered, but more on purpose and have a deeper understanding of who they want to be from this wonderful work that you're doing. Thank you for bringing your gifts to the podcast with me today.
Thank you, Ande.
Until next time, everyone, I'm wishing you a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston, everyone. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.